All right, welcome to the Other Senses lecture. So today we're going to be going through these topics. We've already looked through vision and hearing, and we're going to take a look at somatosensation and also how we taste and smell as well. So let's take a look by first exploring through somatosensation. So somatosensation can encompass a lot of things, right? We should be familiar with some of these terms already. So we know that, you know, uh, thermoception is related to temperature. Proprioception is responsible for body positioning, and nociception is responsible for pain or the sense, right, of feeling pain. Okay. And so let's take a look a little bit more at mechanoreceptors. And mechanoreceptors are mainly just responsible for perceiving motion, right, or stretch or fine details on anything that you touch. And so there's a lot of different touch receptors, as you can see. On the MCAT, you don't need to memorize these touch receptors, but you may encounter a passage or something like that that goes through one or more of these receptors. And so then you would need to be able to identify potentially what it's responsible for based off of the reading and stuff like that. Okay. But you can take a look at how each touch receptor functions a little bit differently, right? Some is a little bit more for fine details, some are responsible more for kind of motion and the stretch of skin. So now let's take a look at gustation or taste. So you have to be familiar with what gustation means. It means being able to taste. And so you might have heard about taste buds. And so on our tongue, there's a lot of taste buds. These are chemoreceptors. Okay, that's important. They are not mechanoreceptors, all right, that we looked at when we talked about hearing. Okay. So there's also not thermoreceptors. Okay. They are chemoreceptors because they respond to sour, salty, sweet, bitter, and umami stimuli. Okay. And so various stimuli activate different types of receptors. So there's specific receptors for um, sourness, specific receptors for sweetness, specific receptors for bitterness, and etc. Okay. And so we don't need to know the complete pathway of that, but we just need to mainly know that taste buds are chemoreceptors and that you can encounter a passage on this on the MCAT. So now let's take a look at smell or olfaction. Again, you have to be familiar with these terms. So olfactory cells are also chemoreceptors. And so humans detect smells due to population coding, which neurons work together to discern a particular stimuli. And that's the same actually for taste as well. Okay. So if you eat a food, there's a lot of combinations of, oh, sourness, sweetness, bitterness. And so neurons fire together in order to tell your brain, okay, this is the food that you're eating. Unlike other sensory pathways, and this is important, smell does not pass through the thalamus to be routed to the cortex and the brain for processing. On the other hand, odor information is relayed directly to the limbic system, and that is a region associated with memory, emotional processes. So that's why when you smell something, right, it easily triggers a particular memory or emotion. Okay, so the limbic system. And just on a side note, a pheromone is a chemical signal released by mainly animals to other animals, which alters their communicatory or behavioral response. So it's mainly for animal communication. Okay? And you can look at this image here to see how this works as well. Okay. All right. And lastly, we're going to talk about the kinesthetic and vestibular sense. So the kinesthetic sense is a sense of body movement. And so it's important to recognize that this is different from proprioception, which is a sense of body positioning, right? Well, that's an example of mechanoreception. And so we also have vestibular sense, which is the body's ability to maintain balance. And we know that's primarily due to the semicircular canals in the ear. So if we take a look at this image here, right, this person that is riding a bike without placing his hands on the handles here, we can take a look and see that there's a mix of a vestibular sense, kinesthetic sense, and also an involvement of proprioception. So vestibular sense, right? He has to maintain balance for sure, obviously. Also, kinesthesia is responsible for sensing this movement, right? Because he's moving down, right? Because due to gravity. And then we also recognize that he has to he has on his body, right, there's mechanoreceptors that help to sense, oh, where his arms are. Are they even? Or where are they relative to, his head, right? And so we can see that we have these three components that are working together here. All right, so that's that for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one.